Um, all right, so next up we will have Chris Engert from Denver by Foot, yes. Thank you, and come on up.
This is the first time I've ever spoken to a financial group of any kind, so I got the memo of purple jacket and jeans, so I did that right. So I feel like I'm in the club already. I normally speak to hiking groups or people that live in Denver that are looking to get outside. I am the author of several books about hiking in Denver, not the Front Range, not the Continental Divide, but in Denver or Metro Denver. So if you're looking to find a place to hike or find a place to get outside, I've got a book about parks, I got a book about hikes, and then I blog about all those things at my website, Denver by Foot. I also take that whole story into an international flavor, and that blog is called EatWalkLearn. So all the walking you can do around the world is at EatWalkLearn. All the stuff that you do here in Denver is at Denver by Foot. So I wouldn't be a good blogger if I didn't say, follow me. My hashtags are Denver by Foot, EatWalkLearn, as are my handles. So please join along. So the reason why I'm here is Amy, which you guys might know, Amy and Tim are both in the FIRE side of the financial world. And they're good friends of mine that we met through blogging. And Amy said, you might be interested in doing this today. So that's how I ended up here. So I don't know your terminology. I don't know your space. I don't know your world. So I will do my best to tell my story in something that's relevant to you guys. You got it. All right? Is that a deal? Okay. So I guess I'll start with, I really am going to start with when I was a kid, because the financial independence starts actually there with, I did not have an allowance as a kid, and the only way I was able to get anything I wanted is I had to work for it. So I had a lemonade stand, I had the newspaper route, I did the chores, I went around the neighborhood, I washed people's dogs, I did all the odd jobs, and that was the beginning of me having my own money and me being able to buy movie tickets or go get an ice cream with my friends or whatever, because my parents did not believe in allowance and they did not give any of that. So then, but I was raised in a middle upper class world, typical lifestyle of suburbia, and I came to college and I was doing well in school, and I went to my dad to get my intent to register to go to Stanford, and it was a $50 check, and it was like August 15th, and he told me he wasn't going to pay for school. This was a surprise. It was not a conversation that we had ever had, and it was one that my dad could afford. So it was really hard to reconcile that expectation that my dad was going to pay for school and the fact that he could pay for school, it wasn't a financial decision, and the information that he was not going to pay, and it was August 15th. I remember walking into my dad's office to ask for the check. He was an entrepreneur, and he did all these wonderful things and made a lot of money. And I remember walking into his office, asking for the check, him telling me why he wasn't going to pay, which is another whole story that I will gladly tell you over a lot of beer. And I know in my head, and sorry, I'm going to have some language here. In my head, I said, fuck you to my dad. I don't know if that actually literally came out of my mouth, and to this day, I don't remember. But I remember the thought, right? Fortunately, as any good college preparing kid has done, they have their backup school. My backup school was UC Santa Barbara, which it was a backup school. I mean, UC Santa Barbara is a good school. University of Colorado is a really great program. Or University of California is a really great program. It was my backup school financially. Like, if shit hit the fan, I could always go to a UC school, right? So because I had not applied for financial aid, because we were not in the situation that financial aid would apply for us, I had nothing except $1,000 in my savings from the lemonade stands and the dog walking and all that stuff. So that was enough money to pay we were on the quarter system, my first quarter of tuition and my first month of room and board. That was it. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to go to college. So off I went. I then started working 40 hours a week and taking a full load of school. At that time, I found out that financial aid is a little bit different now, so I don't at all want to like diminish that whole financial aid story because it's very complicated and very hard. But at the time, I could write a letter to the financial aid board or whatever that meant at the time and explain my circumstances, and they agreed with me, and I was able to get some Pell Grants and a couple of loans, but the loans are very small. So I ended up graduating from the University of California in 4 years. I paid for it all by myself with the help of the Pell Grants, and I think I had about $5,000 of debt when I graduated, which I paid off. Then I ended up working for IBM when I first got out of school, and my first paycheck, I think I had 6 weeks before my first payment or something. There was a time period that I could collect the money. Anyway, by the time my first payment was due on my loan, I paid the whole thing off with my first paychecks. So I know that's not the story now with a lot of people, and I'm going to be respectful of that, but that was my story. So what was significant after that was I got the big job, the big like Fortune 500, the job you're supposed to get job, right? And I go, and in the first, we have all your onboarding that a typical Fortune 500 has, and it was probably 2 or 3 weeks into the job that the 401k pension retirement conversation comes, right? And they sit you, and we're all 22 or something, and they come in, and you guys know this story. If you start saving now, you can retire at X year with X amount of money if you put this, they give you that formula, right? And I was sitting next to this lady who was the same age as me, and she's doing the math, and her timeline was she was going to be 65 when she retired, and she was so excited because when she turned 65, she was going to get the RV and she was going to go around the world and she was going to go to all the national parks, and she had this whole plan at 22 for all the things she was going to wait until she was 65 to do. I was like, I can't do that. So I really started seeing, all right, I get the math, like put as much money away as you can and live beneath your means, and I started doing that. So at the time, I was not in a sales job, so I would get an occasional $1,000 bonus or something from work. I mean, they were really not significant. I don't want to dismiss $1,000, but they were not significant numbers, and I would put those away. So I really started thinking about that conversation, and I thought, if I got into sales and had a salary plus a bonus structure, and I put all that bonus structure away, I could make that 65 get shorter and shorter and shorter, right? So I made a plan to retire at 55 when I was 23 or something like that. So that was the plan I was on. Put everything away, live beneath my means, and so on. So this goes fine. Then I meet the first husband. Nice guy. With the NEFI folk, NEFI, right? Is that how you say it? The NEFI folks, I think what's really important for women to understand, and I don't really like to talk about women versus men because I think it's really important that everybody has financial independence, not just women. Everybody needs to do that. But I think when it comes to marriage, and men do this too, there's this either stated or unstated feeling that marriage creates a romantic financial contract that then you end up you get to combine your money because it's romantic and that's what you're supposed to do. Maybe that's what your parents did or whatever. Marriage is a financial contract. Well, my first husband didn't really buy into that. So we combined our money. We both had jobs. We combined our money. And I was much more successful in my job than he was. I had more assets than he did. I made more money than he did. These were constantly issues with us. Lots of control and power issues about that. And when we got divorced, 1 kid and a divorce later, in the state of Florida, I had to give him half of everything I had. It sucked big time because I had 4 or 5 times more than what he had, and he had not put in 4 or 5 times as much. Does that make sense? So here goes the bucket of money. And while we're in the divorce, divorce is nasty because there's a lot of things you can't do. Like you have to hold on to assets, and there's a lot of things you can't do. I was the one that was gainfully employed, so I had to pay all the bills of the assets while we were in the divorce, right? Is everybody following me? So, and I, of course, I had custody of my daughter. So we literally, after I paid all the bills, continued to put into my 401k, continued to maintain all of my commitments, I had $5 left a day for my daughter and I to eat. I got really skinny. But I was able, so this was like a divorce, it was about a year of time that my daughter and I figured out how to live on literally $5 a day in order to hold on to all of our assets, because I refused to not continue to contribute to my assets, because I thought that was really important, and I was willing to make that trade-off. So fast forward, I meet the second husband, who's in the audience, who's fabulous. And I think our first date, we were hot and heavy on our first date, and the conversation went like this: love you, and if this goes further, we got a prenup. Like, it was like the first conversation ever. And he said, you know what? You're really interesting. I think, that was an interesting thing. Like, no one had ever said that to him before. And so, anyway, before we even got down the path of, all the complicated things that happen when you start dating and merging families and stuff, the prenup was like the beginning of the conversation. So, anyway, that's been very successful, and together we have built a really beautiful life that he's got his financial life, and I've got my financial life, and we independently make financial decisions. Occasionally we come together, we make them for certain things that make sense, but we very much keep that independence. And for me, that independence goes back to that day when my dad told me when I was 17, I'm not paying for college, good fucking luck. And that's where I thought, I'm never going to have that conversation ever again. So I don't know if that's what you guys wanted to hear, if that was relevant, but that's my story. So anyway. Yes. And so I'm 52. At 49, I started seeing an opportunity. I was at another Fortune 500. I started seeing an opportunity. That's where my sales job was. That my job was going to go away, and there was like an easy way for me to exit. And I actually went and talked to my financial planner when I was 49, and I said, "What's the difference between 49 and 55?" And she said, $100 a month. I said, "Done, done." And so I retired at 49, and now I do all this blogging and stuff because I want to. So, yeah.
And when your daughter was getting ready to go to college?
So my daughter is 16 and a half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and fortunately, so this is the story I have told my daughter her whole life, is that she has to pay for college, which is not true, but, and actually just recently told her it wasn't true, but all this time up to then, I've been telling her that. And what's really interesting is she is already, like, you can see her brain working about other ways to pay for college on her own. Like, she's thinking, I'll go to Europe for college because it's so much cheaper. And she's like, it has opened up her whole world about how to think about college because she thinks, I've still told her she has to pay, that she thinks she has to pay. So she's down a whole different path than I think the path that I was on.
Wait, I want to know, well, I know you, but I want to know, like, what people in your life thought you were doing when you were like, deuces, see you, and then you're like, what are you doing in South America? Like, what's been the conversation as other people observe you living your life?
So I've got lots of friends that are still
Like
at the
how?
The what?
Like how you did it.
So I have a lot of friends that are still in corporate America, and they see, like, if you ever in corporate America, you always wonder what life is like on the other side, but a lot of people are too scared to find out. And so I get asked this question all the time, and they ask me, like, they want to know how much money I make. That's like what bottom line is, how do you make money? And I usually just tell them I retired early and I banked all of my paycheck, all my extra cash over time, which is the majority of the truth. And the rest of the money I make now is just for fun, or to buy my daughter something extra or help support her college, whatever. So, I mean, I'm in one of these situations. I hate to saying this because it sounds so, I don't know. I don't have to make money now. I do it because I want to and I enjoy it and I think it's fun and it's a challenge to have goals with my blog and make certain numbers on my blog. But if I pull the plug on my blog tomorrow, I'd still financially be okay.
And do people ever ask you, like, you talk about that year of extreme sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
but when you were banking your money and investing towards retirement, what did your life look like? Like, were you eating ramen?
Yeah,
or
totally.
I mean, like, for
Yes.
years, or like, walk us through.
So when I divorced my first husband, we had two houses. We had the house that we lived in, and then we had lived in a house that we ended up renting. So we moved in the big house and rented, kind of like you guys did. We lived in the big house, and then we rented the little house. But both the houses were in my name because his credit was bad. It's rule number 9 on like financial literacy. Anyway, the loan was in both of our names. The loan was in my name, but the house was in both of our names. That's what it was, because he had bad credit, which is just, anyway, things you shouldn't do. So he didn't have any responsibility to either house because his names weren't on the loans. So that's why that's why it was so financially hard on me. So my daughter and I moved, we moved to a different location, to a cheaper location to live, and a smaller place. We moved from a 5-bedroom, this is like your story. We moved from a 5-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom place that we rented, while the other 2 houses were settling and getting all that stuff done. And then literally we ate pasta and pasta sauce, and meat was not much on the menu, and there was nothing extra at all. I mean, we made our 1,500 or 2,000 calories a day, and that was it, And so she ate at school a lot. She had free breakfast in Florida. They have free breakfast at school, and we didn't qualify for free lunch because my financials just didn't work in the right direction. So, yeah, it was tough.
But was that for just that year?
It was for
a while.
It was about a year. It was about a year because then once the divorce settled, then the cash got released, and then I could sell some assets and do some things. Yeah, and eat. Yeah. So, and if all you podcasters, I'd love to be on your podcast to talk about hiking in Denver or anything else.